from Chibok in Borno State by Boko Haram terrorist groups on April 14, 2014. In a documentary produced by Women Radio 91.7 tagged 10 Years Life After Chibok Abduction, survivors and parents of the missing girls lamented about the promises of the government, the stigmatization they faced, halted dreams and aspirations. 10 years have passed since that fateful day. While some of the girls have been rescued, some have escaped, some are still missing. The parents are asking, loved ones are asking questions. What are we doing? Today, we are joined by a panel of experts and advocates who will shed light on the progress made, the challenges faced, the way forward for the survivors, their families, and other missing girls who have been affected by this act of violence. In this documentary, we've seen how these families have been impacted by the trauma of this event. Lack of hope, uncertainty faced by the families and loved ones. And we're asking again, 10 years after, where are the Chibok girls? My name is Esther Alaribe, and you're joining us live on Women Radio 91.7. And on this panel, we have Barrister Femi Falana, lawyer and human rights activist, Kunle Adibajo, Head of Investigations Home Angle, Bumi Dipo Salami, Executive Director Baobab for Women's Human Rights, Yemi Adamalekun, Executive Director Enough is Enough. And we also have Anthony Okechukwu Ojukwu, Executive Secretary, National Human Rights Commission. As we go into this conversation, you can send us a text or a WhatsApp message on 070-317-56537, or you can also leave your messages in the chat box on Google Meet. Now we go into this conversation as we ask, 10 years life after Chibok abduction. 10 years. We kept on this conversation year in, year out, and here we are, 10 years after, we're still asking the same questions. The girls who are back, the ones who escaped, the ones who were released, we're still asking the same question. What exactly is being done for them? Now I'm going to start off the conversation first with Barrister Femi Falana. Good afternoon, Barrister. Thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right. Good to have you. So, starting off this conversation, Barrister Falana, as a lawyer and human rights activist, I mean, we know that you've taken on a lot of cases speaking up for the rights of individuals. Why do you think that nobody is speaking or fighting for the rights of the family of these girls that have been abducted 10 years now? And for the other girls as well, nothing is being done so much. It just seems as though Nigerians have moved past this conversation. And every year when the anniversary comes, it becomes a thing to remember again.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, I would like to thank the organizers of this program, very specially, for bringing us together to review this matter once again and to challenge our consciences, to mobilize us, to perhaps mount pressure on the government to continue the search for the missing girls. As you will recall, when this unfortunate incident occurred 10 years ago, the military era claimed that armed forces knew where these girls were, but they didn't want any danger to occur to them. For that reason, they were going to find a way of getting each of them released. Unfortunately, that was not to be. Even when some foreign governments offered to assist, the government arrogantly maintained that it had the capacity to ensure that these guys were brought home safe. To divert attention at the state, the Jonathan administration set up a panel of inquiry to help the government or to make suggestions, to offer suggestions on how the guys could be located. Remember, I was a member of that panel, and I declined to serve because it is not the business of civilians to make suggestions on how to secure the release of innocent unarmed girls that were kidnapped in their school. So, legally speaking, it is the duty of the government to ensure the safety and the security, not just of citizens, but of everybody living in Nigeria. And so we have a duty to continue to mount pressure on the government to look for these guys under the law. Somebody who is presumed dead after 7 years, if it cannot be located. But we are all still convinced, we are all convinced that these guys are alive and that the government did not do enough, and the government has not done enough to secure the release of these guys. Again, one of the most horrendous actions ever taken by a Nigerian government was the attack on the Bring Back Our Guests movement in Abuja. The government at the state felt disturbed that it was being reminded of its responsibility. And so, how do we quickly put this matter behind us? The government sent troops to attack the Bring Back Our Guests movement. Initially, the government prescribed any form of gathering around the Unity Fountain in Abuja, where this incident, the protests, the rallies were being held. And in fact, to ensure that the organizer did not move elsewhere, one Mbu, Joseph Mbu, a commissioner of police in Abuja at the material time, imposed a ban on any form of gathering in that federal capital territory. The instance of the movement, we had to go to court, and the court declared the ban illegal and asked the Bring Back Our Guests movement to continue its activities under the law. The government was disturbed. The government wasn't satisfied with the judgment. Instead of filing an appeal, the government sent troops to disband the protesters, in the around the fountain, Unity Fountain, and in fact made it impossible for the movement to continue to operate. I think now that we are marking the 10th anniversary, I think the challenge before the movement and other stakeholders, other interested Nigerians, and human rights community is to see how we can revive the rallies, the protests, to remind Nigerians that these guys are still missing, to remind the entire world that these guys are still missing, and to see what can be done to pressurize the government to devise a means of locating them. Initially, we were told, once the government can take over the Sambisa forest, we're going to be able to secure the release of these guys. So we must go back to that harassment, which I will call harassment of the government, by gathering either on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and let the world know that these guys are still missing. Secondly, since 10 years ago, several girls, several students, including primary school pupils, have been kidnapped, abducted. Some have died in the process.
Hello, Barrister Falana. Barrister Falana, are you there?
And it is so shameful now that the government pretends. Now, again, this has to be challenged. You cannot have a modern government in this age and time with the enormous resources of Nigeria being unable to acquire the necessary gadgets, security gadgets, including drones, to ensure that the criminal gangs, the criminal elements that have made it business to kidnap school children, take them to the bush, where some of them die, and then to collect money before they are released. This is unacceptable in a modern society. And therefore, we must call on the government to comply with Section 14, subsection 2B of the Constitution, which provides that the security and welfare of the Nigerian people is the primary purpose of government. If the government cannot secure the people, it is not fit to be in power. I would therefore want to suggest, since my colleague, my learned brother, Sikh, the Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission, is participating in this program, I would like to suggest that the Commission should coordinate our efforts to renew the campaign for the search of the missing girls. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Falano. So what I hear Barrister Falano say is keep mounting pressure on the government as much as possible. If we can have weekly or monthly gathering to demand and keep asking and demanding the release for these girls. Now, I'll go to my colleague in the media who's also on the panel, Kunle Adibajo, Head of Investigations at Home Angle. Now, on April 14, 2022, Home Angle published a report where it was stated that over 1 billion naira was approved for the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs between 2017 and 2022 for different projects with regard to supplement and education of those girls. However, now my question to Kunle would be, has there been any investigation on how this money has been, if it has been disbursed, how it has been spent, who has benefited from this money, as a lot of these families actually claim that they haven't really gotten anything from the government in this regard. And it's also worthy to note that Women Radio reached out to the Ministry of Women Affairs, but we got no response. Over to you, Kunle.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for having me. As you've correctly stated, I went through, a number of documents back when the report was published, and we found that the cumulative figure of how much the government had approved for the benefit of the Chibok girls was over 1 billion naira. Thankfully, now with the open treasury portal, we are now able to monitor or track exactly how much has been expended in that direction. And if you check the platform, you would find that the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs has spent over close to 1.4 billion naira between 2018 and 2023. Unfortunately, there's a lot of red flags if you pay closer attention to the numbers. For example, you find that they've paid some amount to a company to provide palliative to the Chibok families to the extent of 83 million naira back in 2021. And if the parents are saying that they've not received any support recently from the government, then that means there's a lot of questions to be answered as to how that amount of money was spent. I also found that some of that money went into private accounts in a number of these circumstances. Exactly how much is about 32.5 million naira, which were supposed to be payments for the visit of Chibok parents, payments for the visitation of ministry officials to the community in Borno State, and supposed to also go for the purchase of phones and food items for some of the Chibok girls who are now schooling at the American University of Nigeria. So this also raises questions. If we are going to pay for these services, why should that money be going into private accounts, which, as you all know, is also like a violation of Nigeria's financial regulations, and also raises a lot of questions. There's also the fact that the ministry has spent over 100 million naira on consultancy services, which are supposed to assess the impact of the ministry's intervention in relation to the Chibok girls. So if you are spending below that amount to provide palliatives to the families, or allegedly spending, why are you spending as much as 100 million naira just for some consultants to to do a monitoring and evaluation exercise pertaining the program. So it's number one, theoretically it's lopsided, and practically it also shows a misplacement of priorities. And yes, we did. I also did confirm that the ministry has paid over $1 billion to the American University of Nigeria to pay for the tuition of the specialized education of some of the girls. So I think we definitely still need. When I reached out to the ministry 2 years ago when they put that story, I also did not get any response from them. So I think we definitely need to sit with stakeholders in the ministry to have a conversation about improved accountability with respect to, because it's almost like double jeopardy if you are unable to secure the safety of some of these girls and you are still not being adequately transparent about how you are protecting, safeguarding and rehabilitating those ones who have been rescued.
All right. Thank you very much, Kunle. I hear you when you say that there is an issue with transparency and accountability in this case, really. Thank you very much for your report. And we're really hoping that we get to see more, and hopefully that the Ministry of Women Affairs will be open to responding to queries from the public, because we actually need to know. Now I'm moving over to Zuwaira Gambo, Commissioner of Women Affairs and Social Development in Borno State. Good afternoon, Zuwaira. Thank you for joining us. Zuwaira, please unmute your mic. Okay, so we'll come back to Zuwaira in a bit. Probably she's struggling to join us. In case you're just joining us, we're on Women Radio 91.7, and we're having this very important conversation. We're asking 10 years life after Chibok abduction. Where are the girls? Way forward. What are we doing? What is being done for the parents, the survivors, the girls who are back, the girls who are yet to be released? We're asking a lot of questions, because these questions really we need to ask. My name is Esther Alaribe. You can send us a text or a WhatsApp message on 070-317-56537, and you can leave us messages in the chat box on Google Meet here, and we'll be sure to take your comments and your reactions. Now, going to Bumi Dipo Salami, Executive Director, Baobab for Women's Human Rights. As the Executive Director of a women's rights organization, how are you protecting the right of the Chibok parents, women and girls who have been affected by this abduction for 10 years now? Lending your voice to this conversation, Bumi.
Thank you so much. I'd like to appreciate Women Radio for inviting Baobab to this conversation. It is so sad that 10 years after the abduction, we still have about 89 girls that are still missing for 10 years. It gives us cause for grave concern, and I hope that state actors that are listening to this program, they're already taking action. And we've spoken here about accountability and other issues. So I would just like to go into what we have been trying to do. When the news broke 10 years ago, Baobab was at the forefront of it, because we work in Borno State, and we belong to the Women for Peace and Security Network that was led at that time by Professor Howard Biu, who incidentally was Baobab's coordinator of our outreach team in Borno State at that time. We, as a women's human rights organization, it's been very critical for us, we believe, that we try to address some of the issues that have come out of this very unfortunate incident, especially as they affect the girls that have been rescued and have been, reunited with their families. And one major issue that we are trying to address is that of stigmatization. We know how it works. We know how women who have not even experienced what those girls went through, we know how they are stigmatized in society just because they are women, and because they have been, the society, the government has not protected them enough for them to have experienced that. The issue was politicized. Everybody was, trading lanes. And then, but the issue, the girls, their lives were at stake. at that moment, that wasn't really a major issue for most of our state actors. So we have tried to address the issue of stigmatization through sensitization, through working with the communities. We have been working with community leaders, religious leaders, as well as women's organizations to ensure that to sensitize them, to begin to empathize with the girls that have been abducted, as well as to begin to continue to push for demands for the return of the remaining girls. It has not been easy for those girls. It has not been a walk in the park, but it's a process that is gradually, we are seeing the results. We have, like, one of the speakers have said, we have some of the girls that are back in school, and then we are also, we mobilize support for those women in terms of mobilizing items for them, in terms of trying to build their economic capacity, to empower them economically, to find support for them from everybody that is working in this area, or even people that are not even working in the area. And we have also, we have challenges of the lack of inclusion of women in the security architecture. That is a major challenge for us. It's a major problem for us and for the communities where we work. So we have for the parents, we have tried. Baba was part of the team that went to see them in Chibok, and from time to time, we do that for reassurance, to say that the girls will be found, to celebrate the girls, the girls that are returned. We celebrate them, and then we try to enhance capacity. We try to build, we try to advocate, to sensitize the society as well towards girls, the education of the girl child, because it's very important that we do not lose sight of that. In all of this, what message did this send to girls in that community as well as in the entire Northeast? It said the message is that girls, you have no business being in school. And parents are also trying, most parents are keeping their girls at home or sending them off into marriages. So those are some of the issues that we have been trying to address, trying to protect the girl child, trying to ensure that the girl child has access to education, trying to ensure that government provides adequate security and reassurance to the girl child, to parents in Borno State, that despite the fact that this has happened, it doesn't mean that every girl child in Borno State will be at risk. We are also working with government to ensure that security is improved, is increased in schools where we have girls. So those are some of the issues that, some of the efforts that we have been making at Valor for Women's Human Rights to protect the rights of the girls, to ensure that girls that have been returned are able to function within our society without any stigmatization, and to also assure parents, to work with governments to assure parents that their girls will be safe when they go back to school, and to discourage child marriage, which is a direct consequence of this.
All right. Thank you very much, Bumi.
Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. I'm moving over to Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, and she's also a member of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. Now, Yemi, what progress has been made over the years in advocating for the release of the remaining abducted girls? And it is also sad to mention that when it comes to numbers and documentation in this conversation, it's just sad to see how the numbers are not just aligning. Some people will tell you 89 girls are still missing. The families will tell you 90, 91. It just goes to show you how much Nigeria as a country is invested in this case, Yemi.
Indeed. Thank you very much. And thank you, Women Radio, for having me. Good morning,
Good afternoon, Yemi.
Contributors. Or afternoon at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, though, I'd like to focus maybe a bit on the positives. Quite a number of things that are wrong, could be better, not going the way we would like it to. But I think what has happened, in my view, with the this 10 years is that it's really providing us an opportunity to really see the state of play. Obviously, the girls are now women. A lot more of them are speaking. A lot more of them are interested really in deciding what it is that they want for their lives, or telling their, to use popular parlance, speaking their truth. One of the things that I found out in last 24 hours, so maybe context. So to your point about numbers, I think it's important to even just park that as an anchor for the National Human Rights Commission and the Ministry of Women Affairs in Borno, the two government quote-unquote agencies on the call. Till today, the federal government of Nigeria has not produced a document that lists the 276 girls and the context in which they were in that school that night. What we know for one is that not everybody that was abducted was a student. Not everybody was there to do exams. People, I think one or two had been there to visit. Some people were not students of the school, but they were there to do exams. So the different context of how they were there is all a bit muddled up. Number two, so because of that, when you speak to some of the girls, because the other students were not people they knew, they were not their fellow classmates, they will say, quote unquote, they're not one of us. But they were in school that night. So they might not have been your students, classmates, but were they in school the night of the abduction, and were they abducted? Yes. I watched the documentary from Women Radio, and I listened to the young lady who spoke about the fact that when government came asking who escaped, she referenced that there were 3 of them, and they were afraid because they weren't sure who was asking and just want to be in harm's way. So they didn't put their names forward. So what that means is that the list of 57 that we're talking about today, at least does not include those 3 girls who escaped the night the abduction happened. And so technically, so in reality, they should be part of the girls that we're talking about, but we're not. What we also know at the early stages of when the lists were being compiled, because the Ministry of Education in Borno had a different number, Federal Ministry of Education had a different number, the school itself had a different number. What we do know is that the 57 that came back early were a mixed mash of names, because when it became obvious that people were offering to take them abroad for sponsorship and continue their education, government officials started adding their wards to the list. So again, you have people that were nowhere near government secondary school that night that are technically on our list of 57. So I say all that to say that it's also something that government really can help with if they actually produce a definitive list that all of us can reference. Muritala Muhammad Foundation has produced a report was launched last week that I think, as far as I know, is the first attempt to do that. The second will be the one that EIA is publishing on behalf of the Bring Back Our Girls movement. And ours is slightly different than the Muritala Muhammad one, because it actually aims to speak to the trajectory of the girls. So not just are they one of the 57 or one of the 21, but in a sense, what has happened to them. And I would then use one of their stories to land on this point. So one of them, her name is Rebecca Malum. What we had for her was dropped out of AUN and is now married, because that's the information we got from one of her classmates. She came to the event that we had in Lagos yesterday, and I had the opportunity to speak with her and her husband, and her story is very different. So she was part of the 21 that was negotiated in 2017. She started at American University in Yola, but part of the people that were negotiated with the 21 were those that had been impacted by a bomb blast that happened in Sambisa Forest. So some of them had shrapnel pieces in their body, and that was the crux of the negotiation. So she had shrapnel pieces in her chest. Medical care was unavailable in Nigeria. The federal government refused to fly her and her colleagues abroad to get care. A Good Samaritan, an American lady, I don't know how she found out about them. That's something else that we need to connect the dots. But found out about it, offered to pay for her. So they got her a visa. She went to the US. She was in the US for almost 2 years, got medical care. She enrolled to get a high school equivalency degree, got that, was enrolled in a community college, but her visa expired. And there was no provision to get it was not renewed. So is it that the federal government didn't help? Is it that, I don't know what that backstory is, something else to interrogate, but her visa wasn't renewed. She came back to Nigeria in November 2021. She went back to AUN and she started taking classes. But the federal government said that they were unable to continue funding her and kicked her out of school. So now the story we had heard was, according to her colleagues, she dropped out. But in her own words, the federal government said we're unable to continue funding you because you had left and we're not re-enrolling you. Now we don't know, and this goes back to Kunle's point. Rebecca might be on the list of people that AUN is still supposedly collecting money for, but she's not in school. So she dropped out, she got married last year, and she now has a son. But Rebecca still wants to go to school. And this also ties to, I think, one of the girls on your documentary who talked about that as well. So I will end with that and just say that for me, what's exciting, quote unquote, if I could call it that, for this season is that as a lot of these stories are now coming out, the nature and the shape of our advocacy has to change significantly. To not focus on just the girls that are back, but the girls that are still in captivity, but the girls that we want them to bring back. I'm sorry, not just the girls that we want them to bring back, but the girls that are back. And nobody seems to care what's going on with them. And yeah, let me just say at this point to it before I stop talking. Okay. And this is also important because in 2019, I believe, and I'm saying this also, just to very much thank Mr. Falano. Mr. Falano came to speak at the Lagos Bring Back Our Girls family. We meet every Saturday in Lagos at the, Mr. Falano came to speak. It was, I believe, Leah Sharibu's 16th birthday. We started talking about the fact that Bring Back Our Girls had advocated for missing persons register, so there's documentation, yada yada. Mr. Falano was very clear. He said the government is not going to do this thing for the simple reason that it would now let us, so we think abductions and kidnappings are bad. When we start documenting it and people can actually give the name somewhere, we will be alarmed at the number of people that are missing in this country. And so because of that there's no political will to do it. And based on that, EIE started documenting as best as we could, those that are in the public domain, the names of people who are missing under a project we call Missing in NG. And it's instructive to say that this is 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Till today, the federal government has made no move to provide a means for us to be able to document this. And this is also part of what we need to continue to advocate on. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Yemi, and thank you for providing this perspective to it, really. There's so much that the federal government needs to tell us, and we'll keep asking as Nigerians. You're still on this conversation, 10 years life after Chibok abduction on Women Radio 91.7. My name is Esther Laribi, and we have a lineup of panelists who have been providing insight to this conversation and telling us Nigerians what we need to know. We have Barrister Femi Falano, lawyer and human rights activist; Zuaira Gambo, Commissioner of Women Affairs and Social Development in Borno State; Kunle Adebajo, Head of Investigations, Home Angle; Bumi Diko Salami, Executive Director, Baba for Women's Human Rights; and Yemi Adamoleko, Executive Director, Enough is Enough, as we still await Anthony Okechukwu Ojukwu, Executive Secretary of the National Human Rights Commission. Some of the comments that we have from Nigerians here. This message here is from Hayford Osagi from Ogba in Lagos, and it says, "Good afternoon, Women Radio. This Chibok girls case, and the girls still remain in captivity because our government or the so-called leaders are not ready to step on toes. Believe it or leave it, terrorism in Nigeria is politically motivated, and that's just the truth." Okay, some of our comment on Facebook as well from the documentary that was posted. This message here from Oluyinka Adibajo Shokumbi says, "It is really sad, painful, and a shame that most abductions and kidnappings occur in government-owned schools. This definitely speaks volumes. Aren't promises from our government just scams?" One Kabiru Amoa says, "She was my student," referring to one of the girls in the documentary. "She was my student in Katsina. They were humble, responsible, and some of them had to go get married after they wrote the SSC. They were given SS1 in school after the incident." Someone else says, "May God see them through." This is from Harriet Simon. And Elfrida's Kitchen says, "Really heartbreaking for any mother to experience this kind of pain." And that you can tell really from when you view the documentary, some of the mothers who spoke. A particular woman whose comment caught my attention. She said, since that incident has happened to date, she has not been fine. Her health, every single day, there's one issue or the other. And you can just imagine the level of trauma and all of the whole mental issues they probably will be going through having to deal with this, because it is actually a lot to deal with. I'm coming back to Barrister Femi Falana. Barrister Falana, the First Lady of Nigeria, Senator Oluremi Tinubu, in March 2024, while reacting to the kidnapping of about 200 women in Borno State and 280 children in Kaduna State, advocated for capital punishment for abductors. Do you think this is the way forward? Because it is almost as if we don't have a system that allows us to actually prosecute perpetrators of this act.
Well, I do not subscribe to any form of capital punishment because it has never addressed the root cause of problem it is meant to address. We've started, in 1970, Nigeria began the execution of armed robbers, or convicted armed robbers. Since then, kidnapping, killing by so-called gunmen have been on their ascendancy. In other words, it is not the capital punishment that will in any way address this problem. For me, I think it's a diversionary suggestion. Other Nigerians would prefer that we recommend capital punishment for the criminality that leads to other problems. I'm talking of corruption. Those who are making suggestions that kidnappers be shot at will also not want to extend that to those who loot the treasury, sometimes to the tune of over 100 billion. I'm sure you are aware. Somebody and his course are currently on trial for helping themselves.
Hello, Barrister Falana. Barrister Falana, are you there?
So don't let's go there. And if I may say, currently, there are over 3,000 people on death row in Nigeria because the governors, elected governors, are usually very reluctant to sign death warrants because the laws, I'm saying of criminal justice, and the laws in the state require the governor of a state to endorse, or at the federal level, the president, to ratify the execution. But this is never done. And that is why we have over 3,000 people now that are languishing, in prison. They are on death row. But I think a couple of suggestions, revelation that have been made, I think from Yemi, we need to have, maybe through the National Human Rights Commission, a register of those who are kidnapped, a register of those who are released, and a register of missing persons in our country. Secondly, alleged mismanagement of the 1 billion set aside by the government to alleviate the suffering of the parents as well as the students, missing students, those who have been fined. I think it's important for us, and we can really draw attention of the public to this aspect. And that will really, get Nigerians to be interested in this matter. If it can be revealed that as a matter of fact, this is how the money meant for the Chibok girls, assisting the parents, rehabilitating those who were freed. If Nigerians can know that this fund has been mismanaged or has been mismanaged, it's going to generate a fresh, interest in the struggle we are trying to wage, which is to pressurize the government to bring back the guests, and then look for those who are still missing. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Falana, for your comment right there. Again, we're still asking.
Sorry, just one point.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Again, this will interest you. There is a law in Nigeria that prescribes life imprisonment for anybody who steals more than 1 million naira. I have tried, in vain to get the anti-graft agencies to apply this law. But the government is not interested. Out of class solidarity, they will prefer money laundering. The maximum punishment is 5 years, So this is what is going on about some of these suggestions regarding a death penalty. Thank you. They won't do it. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Barrister Falano. Again, this still takes us back to what we say, that if it's about the laws, we definitely do have the laws in Nigeria, but so far. So, in her response, she's noting that the initial set of girls that were released or escaped were handed over to the federal government through the Ministry of Women Affairs and Social Development, and they were sent to school within and outside Nigeria. Most of them have graduated. The girls that came out in batches are 20 in number. 4 of them remained in the parent custody, while the remaining 16 are with the Borno State government, Women Affairs and Social Development. On arrival, the girls were taken to a rehabilitation center where they received mental health and psychosocial support, bearing in mind the trauma that they have encountered while in captivity. This service were extended to their children. Having stabilized them, they begin to receive training in various skills, and they also got introduced to some kind of refresher courses in basic education, while their children were also sent to school within the rehabilitation center. It is also important to point out this, according to Zuwaira Gambo, Commissioner of Women Affairs and Social Development in Borno State, that their needs, food, clothing, hygiene, and medical bills were sorted and taken care of by the Borno State government. The case of the girls in the custody of the state government is different from the earlier batches because they came out with their children, and so managing them must include sustainable plans for the children. On that, a meeting was held between the Borno State government and representatives of the girls' parents, and it was collectively agreed that the girls visit their parents in Chibok for further discussions. They were taken home, sent home with food and financial support, and they returned after 7 weeks. Upon their return, a meeting was again held with the Ministry of Education team, and the girls chose the education formats that they wanted. Agreeably, looking at this, they all agreed that the secondary school education was ruled out as they were adult mothers already. They therefore requested for vocational training. Fortunately, the Borno State government has a school called the Second Chance School designed for victims of insurgency who have had their education truncated, maybe due to gender-based violence and survivors. We also had other vulnerable women and girls attending. This turned out to be a perfect choice for our daughters. The government has moved them out of the rehabilitation center to a safe space solely acquired to give them the homely ambience to help with their complete healing and reintegration to the society. The Borno State government pays them monthly an allowance of 30,000 naira, gives them food supply of 25 kilograms of rice, maize, flour, beans, vegetable oil, salt, and other private needs. Their medical bills are being taken care of, and also they have access to rehabilitation whenever they want, and their kids also are being taken care of by the Borno State government. So this comment from Zuwaira Gambo, Commissioner of Women Affairs and Social Development in Borno State. So just in case she's still able to join us, we look forward to hearing from her, or she'll send us more messages as we go having these conversations. So now, I'm coming back to you, Kunle, as we still get to look at what the media can do in this. From your reportage on the Chibok girls over the years, what do you think is the way forward in gaining the government attention? Because yes, just like Barrister Falano has said, there's more that we need to do in mounting pressure or harassing the government in ensuring that they do what has been stipulated by the Constitution for them to protect the rights of Nigerians and also ensuring the safety of Nigerians. Kunle.
Thank you very much. I absolutely agree with the distinguished senior advocate regarding the need for us to continue to investigate different dimensions to the problem, especially, the issues of accountability and how money is released to, especially the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, have been spent over the years. I think that could renew interest in, the issues. The problem everybody is facing is fatigue, and it really blows my mind how, movements like the Bring Back Our Girls has managed to stay hopeful and resilient despite, the very tiresome years since the abduction. And even Nigerians too, many people would say, hey, why has this continued to go on for forever? And the government, one pattern I've noticed is that You know, initially the government would release statements every year on the occasion of the anniversary of the abduction, even though it's usually more or less a copy and paste from previous statements. But at least they are showing that there's some level of concern in the corridors of power. But from 2022, if I'm not mistaken, you'll notice that the government has kept silent in the later years of Buhari's administration. And I've searched everywhere. I've not seen that the Buhari's government has even released any statement to mark or commemorate the 10th year anniversary, which is to show that the zeal is reducing. And I think we just need to up the tempo. We need to continue to mount pressure. Of course, we acknowledge the fact that not all the girls can be rescued because some of them have died from various factors based on information that we've received from the survivors and information we've received from non-state actors. But we still need to hold the government accountable. The government has to be transparent. The government needs to tell us, which of them have passed on, in what circumstances, what is the status of those who are still missing, and what exactly are they doing to bring them back. I spoke to one of the girls I spoke to 2 years ago, mentioned how whenever she goes to Chibok, the parents of those who are unaccounted for would ask her if she has any updates for them about their missing young one. And she would tell them that, oh, don't worry, inshallah, she will come back. When she knows full well that this person is no longer alive. But when that information was disclosed to the government, they asked them not to mention it to anybody. And it's just very puzzling why the authority would choose to do this when admitting the reality as it is would help many of these families to achieve closure, start healing, start recovering, and move on with their lives. I think the advocacy that we need to do, the journalism that we need to do should be focused on these issues, ensuring accountability, ensuring transparency, ensuring that the government does more to create frameworks and mechanisms to protect children in all schools and ensure that these cases do not repeat themselves. Even though the Chibok abduction is very symbolic as a result of the scale, as a result of the notoriety, and I absolutely believe that we should give more attention to it because of the symbolism involved. We also need to ensure that the resources are made available to protect the lives and safety of children across the country and ensure that they can access education without fear of getting abducted or assaulted by evildoers.
All right, Kunle. So I'll stay with you for a bit. Let's look at the Freedom of Information Act. You're obliged to respond to us. Again, in Nigeria, we have laws. We have amazing laws. Look at the different areas, but when it comes to implementation, we still drag for different reasons again. So how can journalists better leverage on this to ensure that we're able to follow through? Because really, even as an individual, as a journalist, following up on all of these stories, you know how overwhelming it can be.
Yes, it does get overwhelming, especially with the simultaneous deadline, the fast-paced nature of the media industry. But I think we can achieve more if we collaborate, especially with civil society actors. If we do more sharing, if we are able to share our own findings from our research and investigations, we can take it forward. We should also engage in some levels of advocacy beyond the newsroom, such that sometimes the way where you present your stories also matter. There was a report I did during the pandemic, and the only reason we were able to do that report was because somebody attending a press briefing that the health minister was speaking at raised the issue in that gathering. And so sometimes you also need to go beyond the online publications and say, how can we do we write emails? Do we write letters to the ministries? Do we organize a round table to invite stakeholders or representatives where we can engage ourselves, on the issues? And of course, we also need to, like I said, collaborate more with people in non-governmental organizations to also amplify our voices and continue to stay on the issues.
All right. Thank you very much, Kunle. Some more comment here from Nigerians. This one is from Peter Sunday Obasi. And this one says, please, if I'm to say, the Nigerian government isn't doing anything about this because it's just like a tale to them, just because their own children are not involved. God help the poor people of this country. This message, this one is from Women Information Network, WINET. And it says, we need to hear from the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs and the Nigerian government on what is being done to bring back the girls in captivity. And thanks to Women Radio for keeping this conversation on. Okay. All right. So moving on to you now, Yemi Adamulekun, talking about the Freedom of Information Act and also having to ensure that these agencies are able to respond, because in recent times we get to see some comment, we get to see some report, and sometimes I'm just wondering, like, I don't think a lot of thought actually went into this before this statement was put out. But again, I'm not a politician. Yemi, are you there?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't get your last statement. That it doesn't seem like a lot of thought was.
So in recent times, when you see some report or comment from some political leaders, you're just wondering how did you arrive at this conclusion? What thought process helped you arrive at this that you're putting out to Nigerians?
Okay, so what's your question to me?
Yeah.
You just want me to comment.
So the question is, how do we ensure that we get to hold these government agencies accountable, responding to Nigerians when they get to ask for information, going by the Freedom of Information Act?
I mean, to be honest, the only way I know is a lawsuit. And I say that because, as Mr. Fallon will say, that's what the law asks us to do. So, well, let me take that back. A step back. One, engagement is always useful. And I'll use the Borno State as an example. Last year, we wrote the Borno State governor in charge, via the Secretary to State Government about the Chibok girls. We didn't get a response. This year again, we wrote them. We didn't get a response. We had planned to sue because we said, well, we've written you 2 FOI letters. Let's go to court. And if somebody said, you know what, Yemi, a lot of state governments, Borno included, has quote unquote domesticated it. Even though it's a federal law that should apply to them, a lot of states hide under the fact that they haven't domesticated it, so the law doesn't apply to them. And said you might want to try back channels instead of going to court. Fair point. I tried to find someone that might know the governor to help, no response. Then another friend suggested that why don't you write to the Commissioner of Women Affairs and see. And we wrote to Mrs. Gambo, Ajia Gambo, and she's been an absolute delight to engage. She responded to our FOI within a week. She called me to let me know that she had responded. And over the past 1 or 2 weeks, we've spoken and exchanged quite a number of chats, just responding and being available. And so unfortunately she's not on the call, but I really just wanted to thank her publicly for responding. She responded to the FOI and she has kept the doors open to engage. And she's also actually made herself available for a visit to Maiduguri on the back of all the questions being asked around the children in the custody, well, not children, the women in the custody of the Borno State government. So the parents have an opportunity to speak to them, elders in the community and other stakeholders. So there's some clarity, in a sense, almost seeing with your own eyes, rather than the distrust that has come with the Borno State government's statement. So that's one side. Okay. That's a very positive side. Last year, no response. We wrote this year, no response. Even the Bring Back Our Girls movement wrote this year, no response. And we're going to sue them, to put it very bluntly. The other agency that we've written is the Victim Support Fund. The Victim Support Fund was set up by Goodluck Jonathan on the back of insecurity under his tenure. Monies from, and T.Y. Danjuma is now the chairman, and he's invested significant amounts of his own personal resources. And somebody commented that it's as if we've VSF to generous individual to manage. But the VSF is very opaque. Same thing, we wrote them last year, no response. We wrote them this year, no response. We're talking 1.5 billion naira for the government, the VS on the Chibok girls. That was the crux of our request to them, to provide information, which girls have you sponsored, where are they, what's going on. Again, silence. And again, we're suing them. Now, we've had interesting experiences with lawsuits. Some have been successful, some haven't, but it's the nature of the law that allows you to do that. And I guess the other side will be just engagement and also continued public pressure. I think, I mean, as you can, if you saw in the chat, I immediately asked Kunle where the spend that he was talking about was. And immediately he sent it. I've sent it to our partners at budget. And I'm asking them if they can dig the information and we can publish an infographic co-branded with EIA, Human Angle, Women Radio, Budget, whoever. Just asking the question. This is how much, because when we framed our FOI, we said this is how much you were allocated. Now, we know how our budget works. They might be on the budget document, but that might not be what they got. But when Kune then mentioned what they actually spent it on and how they spent it, it makes the story even more interesting. So when information like that can be made public and made accessible, sometimes it works in putting the ministry on the back foot because they now have to explain themselves. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Yemi. I'm coming to you now, Bumi. What do you think about collaborating with other NGOs, possibly government bodies as well, to advocate for the right of these women, particularly the girls in captivity? I mean, this case is being overlooked. And if you look at that documentary, look at how the parents lamented the girls, talking about the stigmatization that they faced. One of the sisters of a victim there mentioned how some people would jeer them and tell them, oh, you gave out your daughter, you gave out your sister to terrorists. You don't want to imagine what the impact of that would be on their mental health day in, day out, getting to hear that, because people cannot relate or cannot understand how years have gone by and these girls are still not back booming.
Thank you so much. Baba believes in partnership and collaborations for the protection and promotion of the rights of women and girls in Nigeria in general. And for women and girls in locations of heightened insecurity, such as the abducted Chibok girls, those that have been returned, those that are still in captivity, we have doubled our efforts in that regard. And one strategy that we have found very useful is strengthening the capacity of local level organizations and community members to demand accountability for the protection of the rights of girls and women. Like Yemi rightly noted, those girls, when they were abducted 10 years ago, they were schoolgirls. Now they are women, with some of them with children. So how we try to go about it is by ensuring that at the local level, they have the capacity in-house to be able to address issues, to be able to demand accountability for the protection of the rights. And we do this for a variety of reasons. One, we do it to address the challenge of suspicion on the basis of religion and ethnicity when when we are trying to intervene in such issues in different communities, not just in Chibok, but in different communities in Nigeria. Because even within Borno State, there are different ethnic groups and there are different strategies for entry into such groups. And because the local communities, the members, they know the issues and they know the strategies, they know the actors, and they know how to intervene. So we do that for that. We also ensure that we strengthen local organizations that we're working with for ownership. Because in development, you can't just leave from Lagos or from Abuja. You want to go and program in Borno, and tomorrow you're back in your office. You hop on the plane, the next available flight, and you're back in your office. So what happens to the intervention? What happens to the strategy that you have taken from here to that particular community? So when they understand the issues and they come up with strategies, it is easier for them not only to implement, but also to monitor and to evaluate, to ask if they need to re-strategize, and then they need to inform you. That will happen. So that becomes their project. That becomes their intervention. So it's not something that some people of a different faith from a different part of the country has brought into their community. Also, we do that for ease of access. By the time we partner with the different communities, different NGOs, partner with government, it is easier to access. And remember what I said earlier on about the suspicion on the basis of our diversity, which should be to our advantage. But unfortunately, in Nigeria, it is the bane of our underdevelopment, one of the issues. So we also do that to improve knowledge, to share knowledge, to share information, like I said, so that they have ownership, so that whatever goes into that community stays within that community. And so working with government also gives a measure of comfort that we are not adversaries, that we believe that in Borno State there is toxicity within government, and that the Borno State government means well for its citizens. So because there is no government that would go with the negative intention for their citizens, it's about having the right strategy to implement. And then we work with faith and traditional leaders. We know that in northern Nigeria, unlike in some other parts, those two leadership categories, they play a crucial role in amplifying our voices. So if we are talking about stigmatization, for instance, when they understand what the issues are, they are able to take back to their constituencies. Because when you're talking about stigmatization, you're not just talking about stigmatization within the communities. You're also talking about stigmatization even within their families. There was a research that we were a part of in, I think, in the year 2000, where we had parents of the returnees that were talking about not accepting their daughters with the children that they have come with, because those are children of Boko Haram insurgents. So those are the kinds of strategies that we have devised in working in Chibok. It is not easy for us as a nation, with all our problems, to program and everything will be easy. That would be like a piece of cake. We all have to take responsibility. We all have to demand accountability. And we are so happy, we are so grateful to the government of Borno State for being very open, for also supporting the work that we do, and for also ensuring that the rights of women are protected, whether they are in the IDP camps or whether they've been reintegrated, whether people are within their communities, they've gone back to their communities. We believe essentially, so to respond to your question, we believe essentially that not one organization or not one sector.
Hello, Bumi, are you there? Okay, I think Bumi is having some kind of network challenge. We'll just go over to some of the comments that we have here. This one is Atinuke Odukoya, and she says, well done, WFM. At Yemi Adamoleko, the government needs to stop hiding behind all sorts of ridiculous excuses. This conversation should be projected loudly. Okay, this one we have from Adiza Selaboy, and this message read, I work with Senegal in Initiative for Human Rights, and well done to the speakers. This has really been enlightening, and I pray that we gain closure in the future on this particular case. Well, we all are very hopeful as Nigerians that these girls will be brought back safely to their parents, and the ones who are back also, that the government needs to do right by them. This message is from Haruna from Baobab for Women's Human Rights, and this one says, the issue of kidnapping of students in Nigeria is getting worse, but the government must ensure adequate security in all schools, colleges, and universities in Nigeria, especially in the northeastern part and northwestern part of the country that have been affected by insecurity. Okay, as we get to have this conversation, we're still reminded that we're yet to be joined in by Anthony Okechukwu Ojukwu. That's the Executive Secretary, National Human Rights Commission, because it would be good to hear from them as well. What is the agency doing? What steps have been taken by this agency to ensure that the rights of these girls are protected. In case you're just joining us, my name is Esther Laribe, and we're live on Women Radio 91.7, discussing 10 years life after Chibok abduction. In case you haven't seen the documentary on Women Radio speaking to survivors, family members of the missing Chibok girls is on YouTube and Facebook at WFM 917. And so far, we have been speaking to our lineup of panelists this afternoon: Barrister Femi Falano, lawyer and human rights activist Kunle Adibajo, head of investigations Homango, Yemi Ademolekun, executive director Enough is Enough, and also a member of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, Bumidi Kosalami, executive director Baba for Women's Human Rights, and also we're hoping that Zoaira Gambo, commissioner for Women Affairs and Social Development in Borno State, will be able to join us or send us further comments like she has done. So, coming back to you, Barrister Femi Falano, what do you recommend going by this? Looking at the fact that we have a new administration in place, is there any kind of hope that this government is going to be picking this case up and following through to ensure that these girls are back? And also, what would you recommend for civil society organizations, non-governmental organizations as well, to be able to mount pressure on this new administration to ensure that these girls are brought back and the other girls who are back also are paid adequate attention to? Barrister Falana, are you there? Oh, so I think Barrister Falano is no longer on the call, or is probably having network challenges. So I'll go over to my colleague in the media, Kunle. Kunle, so going on from this conversation, yes, 10 years, sadly, what would be your charge to us in the media space to keep doing to ensure that we keep reminding the government of the need to secure the lives of these girls?
Thanks, Esther. So, as it's almost like a follow-up to what we earlier stated, I think there are some issues that the media should be paying attention to. Number one is the Safe Schools Initiative or the Safe Schools Fund that Nigeria is committed to. Some of those programs are being implemented in partnership with international agencies like UNICEF. If you go through budget figures or procurement figures, you also find that occasionally the government, spends money on building perimeter fences for schools. And I think those are some of the issues that journalists should be paying attention to. Are those fences getting built? Are they getting built the way they should be built, in a way that could protect some of the schools? I visited the Federal University of Dusama in Katsina State some years back, and they had this really beautiful permanent site that they had just constructed. For the students, there was very big hotel with generators and everything, but they were entirely abandoned because it was done in a bushy area that was not properly fenced, and criminal elements could easily access that place, and so students did not feel motivated, to move into those facilities. And I think we need to standardize, the safety features across, basic schools, secondary schools, tertiary institutions across the country. It should be basically a state of emergency as far as education is concerned. And again, the government needs to be pressurized into appreciating the value of human life. And personally, I think somebody else also already mentioned it, that the only way to really have that done is when they have a stake in the same systems and institutions that ordinary citizens have a stake in. Until government officials think that they run the risk of having their own children attacked or abducted in these same schools, it will be difficult for them to show the level of commitment that we expect from them. So I think the media should not be silent. Journalists should continue to advocate for institutional reforms beyond tokenism, beyond, how are they responding to the recovered Chibok girls? How are they ensuring that the Chibok girls still missing are rescued and protected? We also need institutional reforms. And some of those institutional reforms would require, as Ms. Adamolekun said, us pressuring state governments to also, recognize the Freedom of Information Act and implement it so that access to information becomes stress-free for researchers and journalists alike. So we need more of those reforms taking place, basically.
All right.
And
Thank you
journalists
very
have a
much.
huge role to play.
All right. Thank you very much, Kunle, for your comments right there. This message here from Jenny Okafor from the UK. She says, well done, Women Radio team, for your bravery in going to Chibok to do this. The Chibok saga is the biggest shame of our politicians. I'm reading the book Girl, which speaks about the experiences of some of the girls that escaped, and it is harrowing. May God forgive many of us. Well, Nigerians are speaking. Thank you very much for your message there. I'm coming to Yemi. Yemi, as a member of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, what strategies have been mapped out to ensure that the voices and the experiences of these girls continue to shape advocacy effort and policy response at national level, state level, and that these conversations are sustained, Yemi?
Well, I mean, a big caveat. Bring Back Our Girls is a movement that has no office, not registered, and is manned by volunteers. So I think your question, to be very honest, is quite heavy for a group of people who lead full lives, leading other organizations and doing other things. But be that, having said that though, I think what's clear, at least for the Lagos family, is a need to kind of rethink how we want to engage. We meet every Saturday, and our consistent demand over the last 8-9 years has been Bring Back Our Girls. And I remember the early days of the movement, we were very clear that because we were not structured as an organization, we don't, for example, we don't receive grants, we don't collect money. Anytime we do anything, we levy ourselves to get it done. Any events that we do, the placards of the girls that you see around the roundabout in Falomo, any banners, anything that you see that Bring Back Our Girls, both Lagos and Abuja do, is individuals that put their hands in their pockets to do it. Now, after the 10 years, so I was going to say that in the early days, we were very clear that because we didn't want to set up an office or structure, so there are no issues of, oh, we gave you money for the girls, the money didn't get there, blah, blah, blah. We would focus on the singular issue, Bring Back Our Girls, and do the best that we can. And so when the girls started coming back, again, it became an issue, the wealth of the girls. So what do we do? Do we want to get involved? This, that. And our position was that there's so many other NGOs, NGOs like Baobab, organizations that work on education, the girl child, that they'll be in a better position to take up the cause of the girls, to ensure that they go to school and things of that nature. And the Bring Back Our Girls movement will just focus on putting pressure on government to secure our lives as a collective and rescue the girls. But 10 years on, as I started with, I think it's certainly cause for us to reflect on how do we want to continue to do this? What does it look like? How does this advocacy make sense? Because if we're, and this has come up, sorry, I was trying to anchor it in something. This has come up especially because you have the girls. I'm not sure that it was mentioned in your documentary, but I think it was mentioned in another documentary where the girls were talking about the difficulty of their lives now, that if they had known, they would have preferred to stay in Sambisa, because their lives in Sambisa was better. Nobody is calling them Boko Haram wives. Nobody is stigmatizing them. There's a routine in a sense to their lives. Obviously, there's a mental health psychology dimension to feeling that way after freedom. But there is also the fact of the matter. So we can say, yes, they've been traumatized, it's trauma speaking, but there's also the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is they had food, they had independence. They don't have that here. They're struggling. You come back on the promise that you're going to go back to school, your government is not sending you to school. So I think we can't discount that. So if we're advocating Bring Back Our Girls, and the same girls are saying we'd rather stay, then as a movement, we really need to think about that. And we do plan to think about that. Okay. Yesterday at let me just land with this. Yesterday at the Lagos event, the Lagos family had started working with some of the returned girls to set up a foundation where people can support them directly. So again, we talked about fair locations going missing. So this is that anybody who wants to support the girls can send them money directly. So we've Sterling Bank has been gracious enough to help them set up an account. They're in the process of setting up a cooperative. I'm going to drop the information in the chat box shortly. They're in the process of setting up the cooperative so that anybody who wants to support them can support them directly. And the idea is, again, part of this agency. How do they begin to speak and advocate for themselves in a way that's meaningful to what they want for their lives?
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very, very much. Bumi, if you're on this call, let's hear your final words on this one on the way forward. Bumi, are you there?
Yes,
Okay.
I am. I'm back.
All right.
Thank you so much. I was just saying earlier that we need to all link our hands together to be able to make some sense out of what has happened to the Chibok girl. So it doesn't matter which sector we are working from, which what's our area of focus, but then we need to say this ABCD needs to be done and who's responsible. And like we have said on this call, we need to empower the community to be able to demand accountability. There are times we are demanding accountability, and then, you know, if they are getting the feedback that, oh, these people they are doing this because they are in a different political party, because they want to upstage us, because they do not belong, they do not understand our community, they do not understand our ethnicity, our culture, then it will be difficult. We will keep talking about it. But we need to strengthen the community, be able to demand accountability. So whatever it is that we are doing, we need to share with the community. We need to carry them along. They need to know. Thank you so much for having me on this.
Thank you very much, Bumi. Thank you. It is very sad to hear that some of the girls want to go back to Sambisa, just how this whole issue have turned out. Name calling, stigmatization. Nobody wants to live in this manner, really. It is really, really sad. It is sad. So yes, if you haven't seen the documentary, please go on YouTube and Facebook at WFM 917. Go to the documentary and keep the conversation ongoing in your different spaces as much as possible. We want to keep talking about this. And this brings us to the end of this conversation on 10 years life after Chibok abduction. It is important to note that the effects of the Chibok abduction are ongoing, and there is still a lot that we need to do in supporting the survivors, their families, and also facilitating the release of the other girls who are still in captivity. We need more effort on this one. Special thanks to our panelists for sharing their insight, experiences, expertise on this one. Really, it's been a long one. 10 years, it's a whole lot. I mean, for the members of the Bring Back Our Girls movement, or Baobab, different organizations having to ensure that we keep these conversations going, and even my colleagues in the media as well. Thank you to our panelists, Barrister Femi Falano, lawyer and human rights activist. Thanks to Zuaira Gambo, Commissioner of Women Affairs and Social Development in Borno State. Kunle Adibajo, Head of Investigations, Homango. Bumi Dipo Salami, Executive Director, Baobab for Women's Human Rights. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director, Enough is Enough. And also, thanks to the Executive Secretary, National Human Rights Commission, though the commission was not represented, even though they had acknowledged that we're going to be here, just to mention again, transparency and accountability. It is hoped that we will take this word back to our different spaces and continue to advocate for the total rehabilitation of these girls and the safe release of the missing ones. We must continue to amplify the voices of women and girls in conflict zones and ensure that their right to education, safety, and dignity is upheld and protected. Thank you very much for being on this conversation, Bumi, Kunle, Yemi, Barrister Femi Falano. Yes.
Sorry to but I dropped the information of the girls in the chat. If you wouldn't mind reading it, if you could look in the chat to read it out.
Okay.
For those who can read the comments.
All right. So I will just take this. So to support the Chibok girls directly, you can donate to Chibok School Girls, Sterling Bank 009797 5000. You can donate directly to the Chibok School Girls. Chibok School Girls, Sterling Bank 009797 5000. And if you have other kinds of support, you want to support them, laptops, smartphones, scholarships, you can send them an email to Grace Dauda, schoolchibokgirls@gmail.com. And yes, you definitely get a response. You can send us a text or a WhatsApp message following up to get these details. And so thank you very much. Our panelists, thank you for joining the conversation, and also to the audience, thank you for your messages. Those of you who drop your messages on Facebook, on YouTube, via text message as well. It has been amazing hosting this one and talking about this very important conversation. Thank you very much. And thank you to the executive producer, Tom Okewale Shonaya, producer Rose Yusuf Kesar. Thank you to Dakpo Oloruyomi of Premium Times. Thanks to Blessing Agbeiton, Nova, Taiwo Adileye, Aisha Sani, Hilary Stephen, Timilaye Ajiwon, and Zainab Adam for the support. My name is Esther Laribi, and this has been a wonderful one. Thank you very much, everyone. Do have a wonderful day.